Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honorees tonight to the stage, the France family. Jim France, Lisa France Kennedy, and Ben Kennedy. If you would come on up, please. Anywhere you guys want to sit. So we're going to, what a wonderful family history. Thank you all for being here tonight, and congratulations on an incredible family story. And we're going to ask a few questions here for a few minutes before we do the award. And Jim, I want to start with you. In the video, it showed that we turned back the clock, that your dad, if he hadn't called that meeting, years ago, decades ago, to consolidate stock car racing, none of this would have ever happened. And he was a successful businessman at the time, running a service station. Why do you think he went out on a limb to do something that challenging?
Well, my father, first and foremost, he was a really accomplished mechanic, and he was a racer and a driver, and he saw a need for, he drove stock cars. He started out building open wheel cars, what would be called a big car back in the day. So like a sprint car today. And he raced those a little bit, was a car owner there, and then he started running the stock cars. And he saw a need to try and help grow the sport of stock car racing. And that he got together a group of people at the time that were involved in the sport. And his vision was to try and have a set of rules that you could build a car anywhere in America and come race it under kind of a similar specification. So that was what started NASCAR.
Yeah, what a visionary he was back then to be able to do that. Lisa, Big Bill was your grandfather, and for people who never had the privilege of meeting Bill France Sr., he was just over 6 feet 5 inches tall, so a very imposing figure. But he was quite soft-spoken. In the times that I would ride on the airplane back, I remember sitting back there doing crossword puzzles with him, and how. But he quickly earned, in spite of his size, he quickly earned the trust and respect of promoters and owners. What set him apart from others in terms of his leadership skills?
Well, I think a lot of my memories were when I was a kid, and the couple things that really stand out about my grandfather is he had so much passion. Obviously not just about motorsports, but about anything that he was involved in. And the other thing, he was a great storyteller. So I would sit there as a kid for hours and hours and listen to him tell folks stories and how enthusiastic he was about racing. And when I worked in the ticket office, we'd have people show up a lot of times and they would say, yeah, Big Bill told me to come on down and see a race. And I'd say, well, where did you meet him? Well, I met him on an elevator in New York. And he'd go, okay, all right. So he had this really captivating personality, and he was able to really gravitate towards everybody and bring them into the sport.
He was certainly loved by so many back then, and one of the reasons that's why he was so successful so quickly. Ben, just like you, your great-grandfather started his career as a driver before moving into administration and leadership positions, and there were several times that when he was faced with critical decisions, that I remember he actually climbed back in a car and drove some laps to prove a point. That's in the NASCAR history books. Now, how helpful is it for you, having been a driver, in terms of understanding the mindset and the impact your decisions will have on the competitors and the owners and drivers now that you're involved with one of the series?
Yeah, it's a pretty neat story, and hopefully I don't have to do that again. But it's neat to be on this side now and have the experience being on the driving side as well. I don't think I realized it at the time, but you learn so much being on the competition side. You almost kind of take it for granted a little bit, but just everything from the day-to-day ins and outs of the business on that side, coming over to this side has helped me a lot. So I'm looking forward to the next few years, and obviously learning a lot from my family and from the great team that they've assembled around them. So looking forward to the future.
Just so you know, by the way, there's a gentleman in the room tonight that had a pretty good driving career going and walked away from a great ride to run the Rookie of the Year for the Indianapolis 500 because he needed to take care of the family business. And it worked out pretty well for Roger Penske, I think. So, yeah, he's done okay. Jim, you know, for those who may think it was easy back in the early years, promoting races when you and the kids were around with mom and dad, I remember Brother Bill telling me a story about you guys would check into a small motor lodge, and you and the others would be boiling hot dogs on a hot plate in the hotel room, wrapping them up with wax paper so you could sell them that night at the racetrack. I mean, what do you remember about some of the other early jobs you guys had to do to make all that work?
We did a little bit of everything, selling programs and parking cars, and it was a family operation. I was the little kid of the family, so I didn't have to do much at the time. But Mom and Dad and Bill were working real hard, and then as I grew up and got a little older, I got involved in it too. I would like to add one thing. I think everybody in this room, after you saw David Hobbs, could understand how I became a sports car fan. And I did have the good fortune of watching David and Roger race in Daytona in sports cars, and I'm happy to say both Chip and Roger have two great teams running this weekend out here. Chip's running the Ford GTs, and Roger's running the Acras with some really great talent. And I think if I was going to place a wager, I know the sports wagering is coming in for motorsports, that might be the guys I would bet on.
Yeah, it wouldn't be hard to bet on those two guys given their history and the incredible talent and support they get. Lisa, it was mentioned in the video that your grandfather stepped down in 1972 and handed the reins of NASCAR's presidency to your dad, Bill France Jr. Big Bill laid the framework, the groundwork for the sport. He had his courage and got the organization up and running. And then it was Bill Jr.'s turn. You know, how would you describe your dad's vision for what he wanted to do when he took over NASCAR in '72 in terms of where he thought it should go?
Well, I think the dad had a great combination of my grandfather, who had a vision, but he also had the business side that my grandmother had as well. And I think it was that combination that it took to get it to the next level. And you know, we talked about NASCAR being a regional sport at the time. It was just on the brink and ready to become a major national sport. And I think that's what my dad saw. That's what Jim saw, and I think that's what they took it to the next level and built together.
He certainly did. Major corporate sponsorship for the entire series, television contracts, and it certainly exploded on a national scale with Bill, with your dad involved. Ben, when you see the stories and read the stories and hear the history about and understand the wisdom it took for Big Bill and then Bill Jr., and the family now to evolve this business over the years. You know, how important is it for you now as a fourth generation in this family to understand where the sport came from and maybe where it's headed?
I think it's extremely important, and you know, it's neat growing up in Daytona and being around it my whole life, and you know, it's so neat to hear everyone's stories, and everyone always asks me, what does it mean to be part of the Fans family? And you know, obviously it's an honor, but more than anything, at the end of the day, they're family to me. And I know I can lean on these two and the rest of the family no matter what happens. So I'm more thankful for that than anything. But I'm just looking forward to, you know, what's next and what's around the corner and continuing to learn.
Absolutely, well said. You know, Jim, we talk about stock car racing being sort of where the family started, but you developed a passion for other forms of motorsports, like David Hobbs was talking about, motorcycle racing, go-karts, and eventually road racing. How did all that start?
We were running just about everything you could run at Daytona when we opened up. We actually had boat races in the lake in there. The only thing we haven't run there, I think, is airplane races, but everything else we've tried it over the years. Some of it's been successful, some of it a little less so. But I think the first time you and I worked together, I was promoting a go-kart race on the backstretch. He was a doctor at the hospital there in Daytona, and he came over and announced that night for our race. So we have tried a little bit of everything. I would like to say that for us and our family, it's a special honor to be recognized with the Artsinger family. They have done for sports car racing what my father did for stock car racing. And I'm proud to have a little part of trying to carry this on.
You mentioned what your dad did for stock car racing. You know, decades ago, that meeting, he unified stock car racing. Why was it so important for you just a few years ago to lead the unification of major road racing in this country down to one major series?
Well, I think Scott Atherton, who's sitting over there, was running the American Le Mans Series for Don Panos, and we were kind of competing with each other. I had started the Grand Am Road Racing Association, and Roger was one of our partners in that when we started. And we were trying to build up kind of our version of a sports car racing that was not centered on the process that Le Mans was using. So after competing with each other for 10 years and neither one of us, I would think I would have him down for the count, and the next thing I know, he'd have me down for the count. So we were at ACUS meeting, and I went over to him and suggested maybe we ought to sit down and talk, and we got together, he and Don and Ed Bennett and I, and mapped out kind of a plan of what we thought could happen if we put everything together. And we put the calendar of all the great sports car races at the time back in one championship, and it's been very successful.
And it certainly has worked out wonderfully, and what's happening this weekend at Watkins Glen's a prime example. Lisa, just as race cars and sanctioning bodies have evolved over the years, so have racetracks themselves, and under your leadership, the International Speedway Corporation has expanded and upgraded so many facilities, but nothing compares to what several have mentioned tonight, the Daytona Rising Project. What prompted your decision, your group's decision, to do such an amazing and widely applauded makeover at Daytona?
Well, thank you. Our team took a look at it, and the track was built in 1959, and it has so much history, great heritage. It also needed a little bit of an upgrade, and there's so many things I think that our modern fans want to see at the same time, and we wanted to provide a little more entertainment. And earlier, Mr. Penske mentioned the Daytona Rising Project, and I appreciate that, but it did remind me, too, of a time when we were partners, and I was walking through the garage area in California, the California Speedway at the time, and Mr. Penske went through in a golf cart and said, "Jump on, I've got a few ideas." And so I rode around the track with him in the golf cart, and I thought to myself, wow, somebody of this level and this stature has so much attention to detail and to every little part of it. And as you mentioned that tonight, it reminded me, I go back to that thought a lot of times, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
You know, Ben, as good as the racing is, the Xfinity Series and then the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, I think most people here who watch would think that the Camping World Truck Series racing is as good as it gets. It's really great. And anyone who watched the Camping World Truck race last week in St. Louis would understand what a great crowd on hand, by the way, to support the series going to St. Louis. Why do you think the trucks are so exciting? I mean, is it the package and the rules? Is it the aggressive young drivers? Is it the short sprint-like nature of the events? Or is it just the great leadership from the general manager?
It's obviously the leadership. No, I think it's a mixture of things, and you kind of hit on all of it. It's shorter races, now with stages. It really helps mix things up, and a ton of eclectic personalities, too. Everyone from the veterans to the up-and-coming rising stars and next NASCAR superstars. So the Truck Series is fun to be a part of. We have a really cool schedule. As you mentioned, it just came from Gateway. About to head to Chicago, a race tomorrow night. And then we go to Eldora in Canada as well. So a fun schedule for races and a ton of personality and good leadership.
And good leadership, you got it. Okay, as we get ready to close, it may not be fair to ask Ben since he's sort of the new on the horizon here, but I want to ask Lisa and Jim, I want to test your memory and maybe your emotion just a moment. If either one of you could turn back the clock and be able to stand and relive and watch again one race that has taken place in your lifetime, what would it be? Lisa, I'll let you go first.
Well, I would have to answer that as a mother, and it was when Ben won Bowman Gray, and Jim was right there. I've seen a lot of cool races. That was the one.
How nervous were you when those last few, when you knowing what could happen, what was about to happen? Did you realize? I mean, were you able to maintain your composure?
Absolutely not. There was no such thing as composure that night. It was really a lot of fun.
What a great memory! See what you've already done here, and you've got fabulous memory. Okay, Jim, one race in your lifetime you've seen, any kind of racing that you'd like to relive, and it would be special to you.
I got to go with Lisa, and it was Ben's win at Bowman Gray. And I was a 10-year-old kid running up and down the grandstands there, growing up, and watching the likes of Curtis Turner and different early NASCAR stars race there. And to see Ben come back and run the race, it was a tough race, and he won it. I think he had Junior Johnson's son was in the race with him, so it was a neat event, big crowd, and just kind of special.
What a great racetrack! What a great memory for the family.
I'd like to say one other thing. My youngest daughter, Amy, is here also, so there's another member
Hi,
of the
Amy.
And then the next biggest thrill that I'd like to see someday is Ben standing there in the victory lane of the Daytona 500.
Now, how about that? Wouldn't that be a great memory? Okay, Ben, we're going to wrap it up here. One question for each of you. And I'm going to, big picture with you, Ben. You've seen the video, you've heard the family history and witnessed so many amazing accomplishments by your family. What is your favorite part of the France family story?
That's a good question. Probably some stories I can't or shouldn't say up here. But there's a bunch of good ones. I think one of my favorites is when they were racing on the beach. I'm sure half of the people in here have heard this, but when they were racing on the beach and selling tickets and all that stuff, and people would eventually find a way to kind of sneak in without actually going up and buying a ticket. So can't remember if it was senior or junior, but they put a sign in the dunes on the beach that said, "Watch out for rattlesnakes." So from then on, nobody would enter from that area. They always had to go buy their ticket. So that was a good one.
Yeah, they pretty much knew how to get the message across there. Lisa, as someone who knows it and has lived it, as we wrap up for you, if you could, in your words, what is the France family legacy?
I think it goes back to my grandparents and just the overall passion for motorsports and family entertainment. And I think if we continue to be true to that, I think that the future will play out as well.
I think that's wonderful, absolutely. And that word passion throughout the years and all the France family, I think is what you see. And Jim, what does this mean to you and to your family to be honored here tonight in front of so many incredible people from different parts of motorsports that have come to be a part of this celebration? How special is this for you?
Well, it's very special. I'm not sure that I deserve the recognition, but I very much appreciate it. It's a family honor, and it's I think also for a very good cause. So thank you all very much for coming out and supporting this.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2018 Cameron R. Argetsinger Award winners, the France family. Now it is time to make the actual presentation of the award, and Cameron and Jean Argetsinger had 9 children. Please welcome 2 of them, J.C. and Louise Argetsinger, who will come up for the official presentation of the Cameron Argetsinger Award. You guys will stay right there. They're going to make the presentation. Put them up over here.
Well, as the oldest of Cameron and Jean's children, Louise and I are absolutely delighted to be here to honor the Frances. You know, we grew up in a racing family, and I heard what Jim said. I'm so glad to hear you did those things too. I used to cut grass and paint the grid and hand out flyers. But of course, when no one was looking, I would get in whatever hot car there was and drive around the track. So we really are thrilled that you're here. And of course, we've been aware of the Frances for many years, and they really have been leaders in this industry for 80 years. Now, 4 generations. There is no other American industry that is so successful that I know of that has been able to do that. So keep going even more. Now, we do have evidence that 70 years ago, the Frances were interested in Watkins Glen. And that was, as you heard, the first year when my father revived road racing and raced in that first race himself. I can remember in my mind from 1948, 70 years ago, vividly, there was a very, very impressively large man, the biggest man I'd ever seen, driving around in a brand new Hudson with a sign in the window, a strange word I had never seen before. And I distinctly remember saying to my father, I was 6 years old, I just learned to read, "What is a NASCAR?" And he told me, and soon the whole world knew what NASCAR was. And very soon thereafter, Jean and Cameron got to be friends with Bill Sr. and Ann, and they worked together on mutual activities and socialized, and I won't tell some of those stories, but some of them I've heard tonight fit right into that. Now, my father often said, and of course then they worked, my father worked closely with Jim and Bill Jr. too, and enjoyed that wonderful relationship. But my father often said, and I'm going to repeat what David Hobbs said, the world knows that the Frances created stock car racing. But as David said, and as my father always said, from the early on, the Frances contributed and fostered or equally involved in international sports car and Grand Prix racing. And I do want to say that my father was overjoyed and delighted when ISC took over Watkins Glen and returned it to the premier race track, road racing track that it is today. And you know, this effort of getting involved in the international racing, which Jim has been so involved in the sports car racing, this weekend is a part of that fruition of all of that great work that's been done. So we are really honored to be here, and Jean and Cameron would both think it's so appropriate that Louise and I, my sister, who also in those early years had to work at the racetrack, and you know, we used to worry it's raining during the U.S. Grand Prix and there was a big expense, and maybe we won't get shoes this year, but somehow we always did. But anyway, Lisa and Ben and Jim, if you'd step over, we'd like to give you this award. Here we are. I don't dare lift this. I don't want to break it. I'll let Jim pick it up. You saw how Chip held it over his head. But there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Can we get in here for a picture?
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2018 Cameron R. Argetsinger Award winners, the France family.
Thank you.
We'll get you guys just around the cup there for a photo, and then we'll let the Frances go back to their seats, and we have one more piece on the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you all for coming. We remind you that to pick up your gift bag and silent auction items on the way out. We want to thank Glenora Wine Cellars for the unique collector's label commemorating this evening. We want to thank Michael Kaiser for donating each attendee to the book Ayrton Senna, Through My Eye. That book, along with the Glenora Wine Special Collection, will be yours along with your gift bags on the way out. Once again, congratulations to Jim France and the France family. Thanks for coming, and good night, everybody.